Hello. So my mic was muted for a good 4 minutes there. This is my second take. This annoys me. Um, but what is there to do about it except film a second take? So I just got home from seeing Wicked 2. My sister asked me to take her to the theater so we could see Wicked 2. Um, so I drove my sister down and we met up with her friend group. And we all went and saw Wicked 2. Um, we got food beforehand and afterwards as well. The thing about being a younger brother is that almost none of the media I consume is my choice. Um, Throughout my life, I think a majority of it has been at the behest of my sisters, forcing me to watch things. Um, and the perspective of a younger sibling, you imagine that as changing when you get older, but nope. So, anyways, so I have Instagram, and I've obviously seen all the videos about like, oh, this and that about the Wicked press tour and like the interviews, and like everyone's joking about the relationship between the lead actresses, um, the perceived relationship between the lead actresses. Um, and I knew that Wicked that the first Wicked existed and that Ariana Grande starred in it and whatever. Like I knew that. I actually didn't know that they were making a sequel and that the sequel had come out. So my sister, she asked me to go see Wicked with her, and I'm like, what? What? Why the hell is Wicked in theaters? It's like a old movie by now. Well, it's recent. It's too old to be in theaters. Um, I don't bother asking. I don't know why. I didn't really question it. I'm just taking my sister to the theater to see a movie, and whatever movie is going to be playing in front of me, that's the case now. I got to deal with that. Um, so, anyways, I get into the theater with my sister and her friends, and I look at the list of movies playing in all the respective theaters, and I see Wicked 2. And then a flood of things come into my brain. I'm like, wait, what the hell? They made a sequel? Wait, that's what we're watching? We're watching the sequel? Wait, that's like insanely obvious. You've been watching the press tours and the interviews. Why would those exist if it was about the first movie still? Like, man, this was really obvious the whole time and you could have totally easily inferred it. Um, but I know that now. I'm watching the sequel to Wicked. I did not see the first Wicked movie when it came out. Um, and I did not know really any facts about the Wicked movies and about their relation to the Wonderful Wizard of Oz movie, which was, of course, what was on my mind rather than the books, because until just half an hour ago, I didn't know that there were 14 books. I had only ever read the first one. Um, and of course, I saw the movie, the 1920 something movie. No, no, not 20s. It was in color. What the hell am I? When was color television? Somewhere between the 50s and the 60s. Um, where was I? So yeah, I didn't know a lot about its relationship to that movie. Um, so I looked it up. I ended up having to look a lot of things up, and what I found out by the end of it is that Wicked 2 is the movie sequel to the movie adaptation of the Broadway adaptation of one novel out of a series of novels written by some guy named Gregory that just like took place in the same universe as the as it turns out 14 novels about the Wonderful Wizard of Oz slash the Land of Oz. Um, the first of which was also adapted into the first color movie to be seen on television in the US and is therefore wildly famous and obviously the first thing the first thing most people are going to think of when they hear that there's a Wicked movie coming out. Um, And I don't know about y'all, but that whole sentence that I just said, I hated it. I hated saying it. I hated looking up all of the many things I had to look up to find it all out. Um, I don't like thinking about it. It just feels like the entertainment industry as a whole, as an entity, is like sick and vomiting. And like that's what we get is the, sequel to the movie adaptation of the Broadway adaptation of the book that happens to take place in the same universe as the super long series of books that was also, etc. I just said it. Um, didn't like that. Don't like that at all. And as I said, I went into this theater knowing next to nothing about like what was actually going on with this movie. So I figured there just had to be something more. Because I had heard of Wicked the musical, so I was like, "Oh, this is like a Broadway adaptation." And apparently, yes, but it goes further than that. Also, this movie was more like apparently, it was supposed to be the sequel to what was actually a prequel, um, like to the first movie, not really to the first movie, apparently, because of all that other stuff. Um, but it was more like in between. It more like bridged those two movies. It was a continuation of the first Wicked. Presumably, didn't see it. But then also it like the events of the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, the book, or like most people would think, the movie, actually happen within this movie. But for some reason, it's a whole thing that we never see Dorothy's face. Like the camera is always like this, such that it like we don't see her face. I don't know. There must have been some good reason they went that route. Um, so yeah, for me, this was like a really weird experience. Really weird seeing this movie. Also, I got to admit, it was somewhat jarring seeing the characters Glinda and Elphaba not be gay. Um, After seeing all of those like Instagram reels, all of those videos that like I heard so many people joke about them being gay. I heard like many people explicitly state that they were. And of course, I didn't know any of it to be the case because I also heard people say no, they weren't, and I was like, what? What the hell goes on in the movie? Um, but I suppose I heard it enough times that I just began to accept it as true, like subconsciously. So I was watching the movie and I was just like, oh, so like, are those two characters a couple? When I see Glinda and Elphaba, but no, then they both have like their respective love stories with a couple of men, and I was just like, oh, didn't expect that. Um, I mean, fine, I guess. And one of them's Ethan Slater. What's Ethan Slater doing here? What's SpongeBob doing here, man? Um, yeah, so there's all that. I suppose it doesn't really matter. And okay, I'm trying my best to like try to like put you guys in my shoes here. Um, so I'm watching this movie and I'm thinking to myself about like how it's written, and I'm so confused. Um, Based on this movie and based on what I remember from the original movie, I start thinking to myself just about the world in which it exists, and I think a lot of I have a lot of questions about it. Now that I've looked up everything I looked up and found out the story of like the many connecting strings of what this spawned from, I'm sure I could find an answer to any and all questions I have. I would just have to read the source material. However, I don't really want to do that, so I'm not going to. I thought instead it would be more fun to make a video where I kind of just said all of the things I was thinking. Like I'm trying my best to put you guys in my shoes. I'm trying my best to make you guys imagine what it was like for me, what my viewing experience and relationship to this movie was for those 2 hours that I was watching it at my older sister's behest. So I began thinking to myself, I would notice these things that they did where they would change certain words and make them different. Like horrendous would instead be horrendable. And there are probably like five examples of that in the movie, at least that I noticed when I was paying attention. I'm sure there are plenty more still. And I started thinking to myself, like, okay, like they're speaking English, right? And Dorothy comes from Kansas. We know that. Um, So, like, is this place a different dimension or something, or is it just another place in the world? And if that's the case, does magic exist in this whole world, or is it just Oz that like just kind of has magic? Is Oz just like a really big island, or like its own continent, and like it has magic and it's somewhere like I'm looking at a map of the world right now. I have one behind my computer. It's like maybe somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, because that's like the super big empty one. Maybe somewhere, let's see here. Well, I wouldn't want it to get in the way of Polynesia. um, so like maybe it's somewhere in the North Pacific Ocean, like near, off the coast. I would not say off the coast. Like if you were to extend it to the nearest country, perhaps it would be Mexico or Colombia. Perhaps it's in like the middle of the Pacific. Is Oz just a place in the world, or is it a different dimension? And then, like, if it's just some place in the world, how is it that all of human history happened similarly enough to lead to 1900s Kansas existing and Dorothy coming from there? Like how much did the course of Earth history in the world of the Wonderful Wizard of Oz change due to Oz's presence? And how would it not have? Because they have magic, and if magic also exists everywhere else in the world, how did that not change a bunch of stuff? Because Dorothy is like, Kansas is just Kansas. It's regular Kansas, and that's why Dorothy is so shocked by like how this world looks. Um, and I started thinking to myself, like, okay, so why do they speak English in particular? And I know the real reason. It's because an English speaker wrote it. Um, but these are just like the questions you have to ask yourself if you want to build a world rather than just tell a story just once. Um, and here's the thing: I think the movie adaptation of the first book of The Wizard of Oz, that one that I want to totally forget the actress's name, and now I feel bad. But the one that had her in it, you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. I think that one is a great example of just like wanting to tell a story, right? Like some girl in Kansas gets caught in a tornado, she gets transported to this other land, and all of these things happen to her. So as I'm watching the original Wizard of Oz, let me explain myself. I stop my recordings roughly every 4 minutes because if they go too far beyond that, Microsoft Clipchamp just kind of gets corrupted. It's very weird. So, as I'm watching the original Wizard of Oz, at no point am I thinking to myself, I wonder how the Wicked Witch of the West and the Good Witch of the East got to be that way and what their childhoods were like. And I wonder if the Tin Man had actually had a relationship with the sister of the Wicked Witch who got crushed under Dorothy's house. And I wonder if she, the sister that got crushed in the past, I wonder if she like casted a spell that corrupted the Tin Man's heart on accident because she was trying to like capture his heart for herself. And like, maybe the Wicked Witch, maybe she attempted to cast a counterspell to save him, but the best she could do is turn him into tin, such that he wouldn't need a heart. It's like, I'm not thinking any of that to myself as I watch the Wonderful Wizard of Oz. Like, yes, presumably there is a reason that all of that happened. And if it all actually happened in the real world, it would, of course, have, a broader context that led up to it. But this is just some story, and we're just reading a story. And it's like, why is the Wicked Witch of the West the Wicked Witch of the West? Why is she that way? Well, because she is. Because she is at the moment, and we're reading a story wherein she is a character with those traits. Um, So if you want to actually really talk about why is there a Wicked Witch of the West, why is there a big castle, um, why is there an oligarchy, that's all because of the historical context and the things that were uh, jammed into the head of the author and where they grew up. Um, where was I going with that? So as I'm watching this movie, I kind of have two diametrically opposing viewpoints, but I kind of hold them both at the same time. There's part of me that thinks to myself, well, what's the point of this? Does this enhance the viewing experience of the original Wizard of Oz if I know exactly how the Tin Man got to where he was and why exactly the Wicked Witch of the West was that way? And it's like, okay, if you want to make a social critique, then I would be a regressive fool to be against that. If you want to talk about why did the author feel the need to have a Wicked Witch of the West and to give her all of these traits, blah blah blah. Like I'm not going to stop anyone or get mad at them for wanting to do that. I would hate to present myself in such a way. Um, but this is viewpoint A. This is like, does this help me? Is there a purpose to this? It's like, okay, now I know that that's why the Tin Man is like that, and now I know that the Scarecrow was actually once a leader of the guards for the Palace of Oz, and he had a whole sordid love affair with both the Good Witch and the Wicked Witch. It's like, okay, I know that now, I guess, but I don't know. So what? um, but then I also had the perspective of like, oh, I'm actually like quite fond of this. Like somebody saw the original Wizard of Oz and they imagined and wrote all of these things, all of this. Like this is true to that person. This is the backstory of the wonderful Wizard of Oz, and it's like I actually really like that. I like um, looking at like what somebody else, what their creative project was, and what they thought as they were watching or reading. And here's the thing: nothing has to change at all about how Wicked was written and what all happened within it for me to hold either of those viewpoints. I hold them both at the same time, as contradictory as it may seem. The thing that the thing that changes things, the thing that would make me abandon one viewpoint and only believe the other, it purely comes down to what the intention of whomever wrote Wicked was. Because it's a huge high production film now. Like that's what this is, and that's what I watched. However many adaptations and remakes it went through to get there and be all the specifics that it was. It's like it's a movie. It's a high production film. It was made for profit. It was made to sell something to the people. It was made to make money. Because that's the story behind every movie. That's the ultimate motivator. Even if you have somebody who is incredibly passionate for the art of filmmaking and who loves writing stories, um, the ultimate motivator is money. And people that run away from society and try to set up their own life, their ultimate motivator pertains to money too, just in the opposite direction. It's indicative of all people irrevocably. Um, because we invented money however long ago back, I don't know exactly. Silly me. Um, and it's become so powerful and so dominant enough that it controls everyone's lives unavoidably, no matter in what direction. So even if somebody has a completely genuine passion, and even if that's all they think about, their motivation it's still money. I consider that a very unfortunate fact, but it is a fact nonetheless. Um, so that's what Wicked is, really. That's what it is now, at least. And that's what I'm watching. That's the movie that I'm watching. But like at the same time, I don't know the author. I don't know the writer of whomever wrote this film or the many things it was adapted from. Like they could have had the best intentions at heart, and they could have read the original work of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and they could have wanted to make a social critique. They could have wanted to critique the nature of those books in some way, or they could have just wanted to reimagine them in some way. They could have just been a whimsical, creative person. Like any and a few at once of those things could be true, and I don't know because I haven't looked it up. Um, and looking at it in that context, I quite like it. I can't help but like it, really. Um, so, despite those being contradictory viewpoints, I kind of hold both of them at the same time. It's uh, it's like 1984, which I'm also reading. How the party and Big Brother tell you to believe two fundamentally different things at the exact same time. You know, they tell you that they saved the proles from bondage, and yet they keep the poor people in the proles down under on the bottom of society because that is what the party ultimately believes is those people's natural position, and yet they know that none of them will ever be inclined to believe that. So they tell them that they saved them from it, and yet they tell them um, that they have to remain that way, and they force them to believe both of those things at the same time. Um, this is completely unrelated to the Wicked movie, everything I'm saying right now. If it isn't obvious, I formulated all of these thoughts within the first like 30 minutes of Wicked 2, which is 2 hours. So I definitely did not pay as much attention as I could have to the movie. I was distracted. Also, I just remembered at one point earlier when I was talking about the whole thing about like how did the course of human history go within the world of the Wonderful Wizard of Oz, and what am I able to infer? I was thinking about that in my head, and I was comparing it to the Lord of the Rings. All the information I have about the Lord of the Rings is tangential. My father is a huge Lord of the Rings fan. He's a big Lord of the Rings nerd. He's very passionate. Um, he he actually, when my sisters and I, when we were all much younger, like little 5 or 6 year olds, he used to read to us, and he would read to us just any book he had. Sometimes it was children's books, but sometimes it was the Lord of the Rings series, and he would just read a chapter a night, um, which maybe explains a lot. But anyways, so I've engaged with Lord of the Rings media to some extent for most of my life, and by my understanding, J.R.R. Tolkien, he was sort of a character in his own books, and his character was that of a scribe who was translating the story of the Lord of the Rings into English from the original scripture. And he wrote entire languages and crafted entire species like this. Like, this is actually a world that exists totally separately from Earth. So when I'm engaging with Lord of the Rings and their media, I don't have to have any of those thoughts in my head at all. Um, because I know that I'm watching like the adaptation of the works of a man who really did invent an entire world, Like with the vast majority of works, of fictional works that you read, especially those of this nature, there's sort of an implicit assumption being made that the majority of human history happened as we understand it to have actually happened up till this point, and this is where the cool fiction stuff starts. Um, on the other hand, there are works out there that actually invent a world and a history of their own. If it's not obvious, I like the second kind a lot better. Um, and of course, The Wonderful Wizard of Oz, if it existed as just a standalone story, just to be told, and it's just like, look at all this. Then I wouldn't care as much about like the imagining the historical context. Um, but like when you turn it into all it's been turned into, I start having those questions in my head. Um, yeah, so I guess just to put a quick recap of like my thoughts as I was watching Wicked 2, I was thinking a lot to myself about like, okay, I have to find out the specifics of how this movie came to be and what its relation is to the other old really famous movie. And then I was thinking to myself all that stuff about like, okay, like why is it horrendable? What's the new etymology of this word, and how did it come to be that way? Um, and I just started broadly thinking about like the whole process of just writing a fiction story, I guess. Um, and I bought a candy that I had never had that ended up tasting really bad, and I was really unhappy about that. Um, and if you guys can't tell, man, I was bored. Um, so now that I've talked everyone's ear off about like the broad and like the meta things I was thinking, I also would like to touch on like just the movie and the things that happen in the movie, like ignoring all the stuff about like the context in which it came to be, whatever the hell. The movie itself, it very much so suffered from that problem that movie musicals suffer from, where the lead into the singing just doesn't feel natural at all. Um, Also, my thing is that like I never watched the original Wicked, but with the original Wicked, I saw the internet's reaction to it and all the memes that came out. Um, I had been seeing those about Wicked 2 as well, but I hadn't watched Wicked 2. So now I go and watch Wicked 2, and it's like I'm seeing something that I've been seeing so many people talk about. It almost feels weird in a way. It's like Wicked 2 existed in a completely different way in my mind before I watched it, but it still existed in my mind. I feel like I was kind of robbed of my chance to take it seriously because I saw all of these memes about it and all of these clips from interviews about it. It's like it's before I even saw the movie, it stopped being just a movie to me, and that made it a weird movie to watch. Also, I think there's some mildly interesting things to be said about like when I'm watch what me personally, when I'm watching a musical, I feel no need for the actors to convince me that they are those characters, you know? Like I think that is something about like that is an aspect of this medium, plays I mean. Um like they're playing characters, they're putting on a performance, they're acting, but specifically when it's plays, when it's like it's a closer proximity to being real life, if I'm in the stage watching people doing all that in real time, it's like I don't need them to play a character so well that they like convince me for a moment that they are that character, like how you kind of expect from movies, at least subconsciously. Like that's what acting directors say sometimes, isn't it? Like you got to sell it, you got to make me believe it. I personally, I just don't hold that expectation for musicals. It's like, these people are right in front of me doing all this. Like, why should they hide from me that they're putting on a performance and they're just telling me a story? Like I like that actually. I think that's cool. And I don't think they should I don't think they should make any attempt to take me out of that reality. But watching a movie is different. It's further removed. You're watching it on a TV screen, and these actors spent months and sometimes years filming all of this footage, and it was all put together afterwards. It's like, but these guys, it's better if they convince me, that they are those characters. That I like watching a movie and believing it. Very different from musicals. I interact with those two mediums very differently. And because of that, I think play adaptations are almost up to an even higher standard. It's like I watch the effects and I'm like, I don't want to know that these are just special effects. I want you to sell it. If I'm watching a musical, the effects can be as shitty as you want because there is an expectation on me, the viewer, to have a really active imagination. You know, I look at the like props that the actors putting on the performance have to actually hold, and the makeup that they actually have to have put on just a few hours ago. And it's like I can imagine, I can imagine that they're more than what they are. It's like that's on me, and that's fair. If I'm watching a movie, like they had plenty of time and computers to do all that. So sell it. Um, and yeah, I think that makes play adaptations of I reversed that. I think that makes movie adaptations of plays just kind of weird to watch because it's like it's adapted from a musical, but like now it's a movie. So at once I'm thinking to myself the things I think about musicals, about the actors not really having to sell it, but I'm also thinking to myself like this is a high production movie, they should be selling it, and it's like you know they're almost both true in different ways at the same time. Um, but I don't really like that. I believe I've said everything I wanted to say about my experience seeing Wicked 2. Um, if anyone's worried, I love my sister and her friends very much. I was not unhappy with being asked to go to this movie. Like we all joke about our siblings when we're with our siblings. I don't know if it communicates the best that I'm just joking when I'm talking about my sibling. Um, don't worry, guys. I love her and I enjoy watching movies with her and her friends. I'm not a cynic. I certainly hope I didn't come across too CinemaSins esque at any point here. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys. Goodbye.